terms of time zone, maybe good morning, good afternoon, or good day as a general term. So today we have a very interesting session. So I don't think we've had anyone present to us on Power BI's deployment part of the whole dashboard building. A lot of time we get sessions that focus more on, the Power BI desktop, but then a lot of times people are not aware of the importance of the Power BI service and the other aspects of Power BI. So today we are very privileged to have a Microsoft MVP, uh, MVP Denis Selimovic. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Oh, I tried. Okay. So he's the one who's going to take us through these. I'm going to try to get out of his way so that we give him the time that he needs to take us through everything, and you can ask questions. He's been generous in allowing us to allow you ask questions during the session, which means you can simply just go to the chat and type in your question. If you want to ask, like make me allow you to be able to unmute yourself, you can raise your hand. Oh, I see people already helping me with answering some questions in the chat. Okay, so this session is brought to you by your BZ and MHS Analytics. Your BZ is the Microsoft Excel Consulting, Power BI Consulting, Financial Modeling Consulting, and Training Institute. We also do SQL and Python too. We are based out of Nigeria, so if you're in Nigeria and you need training, or you have friends who need training, or you work in a company where they need a consulting service, you can reach out to us. MHS Analytics is the Canadian entity, like it's a sister company to your BSEG. So it's the same organization, but this is now the Canadian arm. So the same services. And today we've got, like I've mentioned to you, I'm going to share his LinkedIn in the chat so that you can connect with him, and I'll also share his blog, WhatTheFact.bi. But Denis is an enthusiastic technical speaker. He's a Power BI. He's been in Power BI since the beginning, and he's also an MVP. So he's got all of the credentials that you'll be looking for in an expert, and he's based out of Switzerland. He does these training, consulting, and he's someone who likes to share his knowledge. So that's why we are very fortunate that he's here today with us, and we will learn from him today. So I'm going to get out of his way so that he goes into his session for us. So Denis, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will turn off my camera. I'll keep track of the chat. If there's any questions to you, I'll try to notify you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I also have a quick introduction of myself, so you will get to know a little bit more. And thank you also for mentioning the whole thing about the questions. If you have any questions, just drop it in the chat, and Michael will take care of it and ask the questions. Today, I will show you a little bit how you get started with the Power BI Developer Mode. The Power BI Developer Mode is the new possibility on how to deploy reports in Power BI. And as you can already see in my main slide, the technology we're using is Git. If you're not familiar with Git, you don't have to know about Git. We will get to all of this in this session. Then what are we going to see today? No, first the introduction of myself. My name is Denis Selimovic, and Michael, you pronounced it absolutely great. This was nearly perfect. I work, as you also already mentioned, in Switzerland at a company called Betelligent. And in Betelligent, I work as principal consultant. I'm doing all the things around Power BI. This is mainly because I'm a Power BI user since the release in 2015. Power BI was released, I think, in July 2015. And in September, I was in a project where our client really wanted to use Power BI, but the software was completely new, so I had to learn it. And yeah, back then I wasn't very happy or very enthusiastic about it, but I realized very quickly that the software is very good. And so I'm since the beginning, I'm working with Power BI. At one point, I started also organizing the back then Power BI User Group Switzerland. We renamed it since the release of Fabric to the Fabric User Group Switzerland, together with Christian Buballo from Microsoft Switzerland. It's once per month and also virtual, so feel free to join us also from Nigeria, all around the world. Always the first Thursday of the month. This was my small own advertisement blog. I hope this is okay. Then I'm also in the Power BI community, a Power BI super user. And in case you would know me, you would know me most likely from my blog called WhatTheFact.bi. And in case you want to get in contact with me, you can either keep my name, or I made an easier link, WTF.bi/LinkedIn. You will automatically come to my profile, to my LinkedIn profile. And as already mentioned, I was last year awarded a Microsoft MVP. So yeah, my whole business life is about Power BI, and I'm very excited to share the new technologies that the updates bring. So what are we going to see today? First of all, we will take a look, how is the current status? How can you deploy at this moment, without the developer mode, Power BI reports to the Power BI service from Power BI Desktop? Afterwards, I will give a quick introduction to what is Git in general, the Git technology. Then we will take a look what exactly is Power BI developer mode. Then I will do a demo or multiple demos, how this whole thing works after we learned about the theory. And at the end, we will go a little deeper into the TIMDL, the tabular model definition language. And last but not least, we should have enough time for questions or answers. I don't know how strict it is with a time limit. I can also stay longer in case we have multiple questions. And as already mentioned, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them immediately. I think it's usually better than waiting until the end, because then the topic or what I say is still here and we all know what we're talking about. All right, then let's get started about the current possibilities and also to get an understanding why a change was needed. So at the moment, or for many, many years, the only possibilities to deploy were pretty limited. So the first question is, what in general is a deployment? And the deployment is nothing else than the general definition to make an application available for end users. And deployment, I mean, we're here specifically in the Power BI context, but you will have deployment in general in software development. What means also if you write, I don't know, programs in C# or in .NET or whatever, or in Python, a deployment is just to make this this application available to the end users. Until now, or in general, what this means for Power BI is we have in our notebook, the middle thing here should represent our notebook. In our notebook, we have Power BI Desktop, and in Power BI Desktop, we have a PBIX file. We want to bring this file to the Power BI service. And the Power BI service, it will then be published into a workspace. And in the workspace, it's usually split into two elements. One is a report and what is a data set. And sorry, a semantic model didn't update the slides, but it's the same actually. This is what a deployment means in Power BI. Now, one or the other might ask, what is here the problem? Because I have a publish button in my Power BI desktop, and this is also completely right. So in general, you can easily publish with pressing one button. In your Power BI desktop, you press your publish button, and then the report will be uploaded to the Power BI service. To be specific, we have also a few other ways to deploy. One is deployment pipelines. I will not go into details today, but if you want to know a little more about deployment pipelines is definitely one thing you should take a look at. And we can also do a little bit more complicated approach. You can also deploy with the Power BI REST API. So the graphic is a little small, I know. But in general, you have your Power BI desktop. You can publish to a workspace. Then with PowerShell, you can download this report and deploy it to the next workspace and so on. The screenshot is, by the way, from the Microsoft deployment white paper. I highly recommend this white paper if you didn't read it. It is quite big, but it has a lot of content. These are the possibilities we had to publish until now. So we could, to deploy, sorry. We could just press the publish button. We could use Power BI deployment pipelines, or we do a more complex approach with multiple REST API calls. This is the status that we had until now. Now, one or the other person might ask, why? What is wrong with that? And in general, there's nothing wrong with this. The problem is just if we go to a more professional level, like an enterprise level, we talk about bigger units, bigger group of people, this process gets kind of complicated. And I will explain you why. We have actually three main points that are can be really a pain when we talk about bigger groups and a more professional approach. The first one is the collaboration approach. And here we have one thing. Did you ever try to save as? Because I do this for multiple new versions. Then I have a version 1, then I have a version 2, then I have a version 2 new, then I have a version 2 newer, then a really version 2. And at the end, you get many, many different versions that you cannot really see the difference. And another problem is only one person can work on a file. So if you're two different people in one team, one wants to work, for example, on the data model, one wants to work on the measures, one wants to work on the report itself, you really have a problem because you have to have multiple versions of Power BI, of the Power BI file, because you cannot work at the same time at the same file. The last one wins. That's the biggest problem. This means if we don't have a good coordination, for example, I open a Power BI file, I make some changes. At the same time, Michael is opening the same Power BI file. He is doing some changes. I save my changes. He saves the changes. And if we use the same folder, like a network drive, at the end, the last one wins. So this could mean everything I changed is gone. Michael saved the last, so all of his changes are there. And that can really be a problem. If we're a small BI team, let's say it's only 2-3 people, it's not such a big problem because, I mean, we can communicate. I can tell to Michael, hey, Michael, I will change today and tomorrow this and this report. Please don't do any changes without informing me. And then I can change things. But if you're in a bigger team, this is getting quite complicated. And the longer the time frame, the more likely it will be that at one point there will be errors. There are possibilities actually to merge these kind of things together. There is the ALM toolkit, for example. It's a nice piece of software, I think orchestrated by Christian Wade. He is a program manager at Microsoft. We'll come back to him later. And this tool makes it possible to merge the changes of multiple Power BI files, but still I have to know that there are two different versions that I can then do the merge together. So if I, for example, open a file, quickly do a change and overwrite Michael's changes, we both don't even know that we were interfering with each other. Still, this tool helps with it, but in general, I hope you see the problem that we have. The next one is the versioning. Out of the box, Microsoft and Power BI doesn't provide any kind of versioning. So as I mentioned before, I have version 1, I have version 2, I have version 3. There is no included versioning. I have to do a versioning on my own. This means if I take a for me, one approach that I like actually pretty much is that I save my files in SharePoint. And in SharePoint, you have a history, you have the different changes. So in case something goes wrong, it's doing these changes, and I can also overwrite that setting. But in general, I can go back to an older version that is saved in SharePoint. I can also check them in, for example, into Git. We will talk a little bit later what exactly is Git, but I can use another versioning system like Git. I could also use Subversion, little older approach. I can come up with my own system, but Microsoft doesn't provide a system like this. And last but not least, the files take a lot of space. So if I have different version, every version will take the whole size. If I have a PBIX file with 100 megabyte and I do 10 changes, I have 1 gigabyte of storage that is used. If, for example, I have a Power BI PBIX file, I only open it and want to change one visual and do create another version. Another time 100 megabyte is saved. And if I repeat this over and over again, it's taking really a lot of space, even for tiny changes. Even if I only add one measure, every time it's again changing 100 megabyte. And I talk about normal size. I don't talk about 1, 2 gigabyte files that really take a lot of space. If I change templates, they also have to be reloaded. So if I have, for example, Power BI files that use different templates, they all have to be reloaded. I have many, many issues with this. And the last issue that we have with the current deployment process is transparency. I actually have no clue. Here's an example. This is an example from SharePoint. So here were, let me zoom in quickly. Here were multiple versions, all saved by Josh, one at 255, one at 1245, 1237, 1224, 1133, 1117. When I ask him now, hey, do you remember last month you did a change, but at one point something went wrong. Can you bring me back the version that was still working? You actually have no idea which version is it. Is it version 10? Is it version 6? Is it version 5, 4? You just don't know. And the only thing you can do is you download the file, you open it, or you do a backup, a restore of the file, you open it with Power BI, and you check if this works. And if you have, for example, so many versions of a specific file, it's a really, really big pain if you want to restore an old version. So in general, a Power BI file, a PBIX file, is a black box. You don't know what exactly was changing from one version to the other version. You can just guess and maybe think at around this time frame, the report was still working, later it didn't work. So around this time frame, maybe it should have worked. Exactly, you have no clue what is changing from one version to the other version. These are the problems that we have with the old deployment process. So again, if you're a small team, you're only 1, 2 people, you only have a few reports, there's nothing wrong with it. The problems come the bigger the team gets. The bigger and the more professional the company gets, the more these problems are occurring. But I can already say that we have a solution for this. And the solution that we have is Git. Now, if you're not familiar with Git, I will also talk a little about what exactly is Git. On this slide that says what is Git. So to answer these questions, Git is a source code management software, and it was developed in 2005 by Linus Torvalds. Linus Torvalds is one of these two guys. I don't tell you who. No, it's not a penguin. So if, in case you don't know Linus Torvalds, Linus is the guy who mainly developed Linux, the operating system. And he, of course, not alone, but he was building the foundation of it. And he's actually a pretty smart person. And back then already, there were existing solutions, but I think they were not open source. It was proprietary from a company, and then he did an own version of a versioning system, and this is called Git. Now, Git is open source, and in case you don't know Git is widely supported nowadays. It's the standard for software development. So Microsoft is developing a lot with Git. Actually, everything, or yeah, mostly more or less everything in Linux is developed with Git. And in general, I personally, I'm now 12 years in consulting. I didn't find a single project from 2010, 11 on that was not the source code was not maintained with Git. So it's a pretty big standard, and nowadays it works very well. There are so many software were built with this software, and it's working perfectly. So it's a de facto standard for software development since many, many years. What are some principles of Git? They have a manifest, they have a whole website. You can go into it and read. For me, the most important principles of Git are the following. First of all, the code is kept in a repository. Now, in case you don't know what a repository is, it's kind of a strange word. It's actually, let's say, it's a folder that contains your code. Let's keep it like this. And we will create a repository later. Two things, two main principles are distribution and autonomy. So the whole code is always distributed and it's autonomous. What also means every user has a local copy of the repository. This means I have on my notebook, for example, if I want to change something, I can download this. I can have my version of my code. I can do my changes. My changes are saved locally. And at the same time, someone else can develop on it and has locally on his notebook his own repository. So like this, you can work independently, and also important, you can work without internet. So once I have all my files downloaded, I can just work with it. I don't need internet. I can do this on a flight, or I don't know, when I don't have internet, I can work independently of being online. Then, as you probably think with this approach, what happens now if I work offline on my code and someone else is doing changes on the same code? Two key concepts that it has, it's branching and merging. We will get to know both concepts soon. Branching more or less means I develop one feature. So I work on a copy of the code. I develop my feature, like a new DAX measure. And once I'm finished, I merge this again. So I put back my code to the main branch, to the original main branch that has all of the releases. Then another approach is, or another principle, sorry, is history and time travel. So I have, first of all, I have different versions. This probably you heard already from many software that you downloaded. Okay, Power BI has now month names as release. It's month release, the May release, or the April release, or something like this. But maybe you heard of other software that you have now, for example, Windows 10 or Windows 11. These are the main software versions. And you can always go back to a different version. So for example, if I say, hey, I have my report version 3.2 and this doesn't work, I can always go back to version 2.8, for example. Or I can do a time travel. I can say, go back to the version that was working last week on Monday. So I can go back to a specific version, or I can go back to a day. And this helps me very much when I make a mistake. If I really screw up the report or something, and I want to go back to another version that either is a specific version number, or I know at a specific date the other version was still working. And now the thing that was mainly a deal breaker, why it didn't work with Power BI, it works best. Some people say only, but it also works with proprietary format. But really, to have all of these concepts, it works best with text-based files. And we will get to know, we will see later why this is. I can already say, because we do different comparisons, and we only save the changes if we make any changes to our repository. And as mentioned, no, I didn't mention, but I will mention it now. It is implemented by many solution providers. So Git itself is the technology that was implemented by Linus Torvalds, but there are many solution providers who are using Git. The most famous that you probably know is GitHub. GitHub is using Git, and you can use it for free. There's also a company, an enterprise version of GitHub, and you can store your code in GitHub, but GitHub is not the only one. There are also other providers who are doing Git. Very famous is also GitLab, also used by many companies. Then Microsoft has their own version. It's in Azure DevOps. It's also working with Git. You have Bitbucket. You have many, many different providers. But what is important for me, all of them, where is my mouse? My mouse is gone. Here it is. All of them are using the technology of Git, but they use their own way to implement it. It's like they're different providers, and all of them are using Git. So you can use Git with many different providers. All right. how does it now work with branches and merging in Git? So in general, I have my master branch. My master branch is I have a specific software, or in our case, let's say a specific report. And this report is the main report how it should be. Now, if I want to, for example, do some changes, I want to create a new table or change relationships, or I want to, let's do something easy. I want to create a bunch of new DAX measures. This takes time because they are very complicated and my Italian is not so good. So I will probably do a new branch. What is this? Like a copy of the master branch. At the same time, probably I have a security issue. I realize I did something wrong. So what this means, probably I changed here a relationship or something that gave me wrong results in my master branch. But I, on the same time, I continue with my work. Every day I save my changes. I publish my changes to the repository. So I have like a second, it's like a second branch where I develop new features. And at the same time, in the master branch, there can other features be developed. And at the end, we all merge them together. And then we have a final version of the master branch, and the master branch has then my work included that I developed on a copy, and at the end it all came together. But at the same time, the master branch is not blocked. I can develop new features, add security updates, and so on without interfering with the development of new DAX measures. Also, what is possible that other people at the same time start work. For example, let's say here the orange guy, he started also working on something, but he was working on something totally different, like he was creating calculation groups or something like this. So he took also the latest version of the master branch. Then he did a local copy of this branch. He did another branch. He was implementing his changes. And at the end, he also merged back into the main branch. The main branch here, and this is a key takeaway, the main branch is here the most important branch that you have. All of your changes reflect in there, and this is actually the only version that your end users will get to see. All of your branches, the copies where you start working on it, this is only for you, not for the end users. The end users only see the main branch, the master branch at the end. All right. So far, any questions?
So for now, no questions except someone said, at the beginning when you were explaining what you'll cover, and you mentioned deployment pipelines, and that you would not cover deployment pipelines today. So as this was like, oh, are we going to have a future session on deployment pipelines? So that was just a comment. And
we actually can do that. Also, deployment pipelines work very, very nice now in combination with the Power BI developer mode. So if your audience is interested, we can also, or maybe you have another speaker, but otherwise I also can do another session about deployment pipelines in combination with the developer mode. But we can discuss this afterwards.
We'll take the offer. Thanks. Thanks. Okay. So that's all there is for now. So thank you.
Perfect. I hope until now it was clear, because now we go a little deeper. Everything will come back together when we answer the question, what is the Power BI developer mode? And as I already, as you can probably mention, the Power BI developer mode, here all of the things come together. We have in general 3 people, I call them the fathers of developer mode, that were involved in these things. Of course, there were more people involved, but these were the main characters. And the first one is Matthias Tierbach. We will come back later to what exactly they did. Rui Romano and Christian Wade. Rui Romano and Christian Wade are both from Microsoft. Matthias Tierbach is an independent consultant, working now on a few tools also about Power BI. And these 3 actually made this whole thing possible. Now, what exactly made it possible? So what we have in the developer mode is more or less just Git for Power BI. So the whole technology that I showed you now was implemented into Power BI. And we can now use Power BI with Git. This is mainly the work of Matthias Tierbach. He created in his free time as an open source tool, a tool called PBI Tools. And actually PBI Tools was solving the biggest challenge that we have. That was, it was bringing a PBIX file into a text form. So he had this tool. You said this tool save out my Power BI file as a file structure. And then it was extracting the PBIX file into a folder and file structure. And this is still available under pbi.tools. Matthias did really great work in this. And this was the basis for the whole concept. Out of his work, Microsoft, and together with Matthias, created a new data format that is called TMDL. We will get into this in a few minutes. And it's the tabular model definition language. So this is more or less what PBI Tools did. It is doing the whole Power BI file, the whole data model in a text form. Afterwards, Matthias worked together with Microsoft. They implemented the whole thing into Power BI. What means Christian Wade and Rui Romano, they created the developer mode together with Matthias. Of course, there were many, many more developers involved. Thanks already to all of them. For me, I still think this is one of the best features we had in many, many years, especially in more professional areas. I will explain now how the Power BI developer mode works. And this is actually, you will know a little from the Git slides we've just seen. We have the same scenario as we had before. We have down here, we have our Power BI desktop with a PBIX file, and we want to bring this Power BI PBIX file to Power BI service. At the beginning, we showed you, or I showed you the deployment possibilities, but now with the Power BI developer mode, it works a little different. So what I'm doing now is I, let's say, more or less save my Power BI file into Git. And this version will then be taken from Power BI service. So Power BI service is also connecting to Git and will take this version to host it in the Power BI service. Now, this is a huge advantage because suddenly we have Git here in the middle. We don't have to, what we did before, let's clear this. What before we did is we were going directly from PBIX and send the thing to Power BI service. Now we have the Git layer in the middle, and this is a huge advantage because now I have my report in Power BI service. I don't need my Power BI desktop anymore, but probably I want to develop a new version of the report. I want to change something. So what I can do is I create a new version in Git. And after this is finished, I can merge it with the main branch, and then it can automatically update to Power BI service. Let's say I want to change again something. I do just a new version. This is saved in Git, and then it's automatically deployed to Power BI service. Now, what is the big advantage here? The big advantage is, first of all, the decoupling between the different versions and the Power BI service. So with PBIX, I can now create new versions. I can publish them, deploy them to Git. And once I have a final version, this version can be deployed to Power BI service. Another huge advantage is what happens if I make an error and let's say in this version, some measurements are wrong. Until now, I had to open the last version if I have it saved somewhere. If I didn't, I'm anyway screwed. But if I saved it somewhere, I have to open it. I have to change the, make sure the changes are probably correct. Maybe I want to still add some of my new changes. And at the end, I have to upload it to Power BI service. With the new approach, I have it very easy because I have all of my versions here in Git available. So if I screw up this version, I can just say, hey, Power BI, roll back. We take the last version that was working until yesterday. And that's a huge, huge advantage. Now, how does this whole thing look with the branching and the merging? We have the same again. So we have the Power BI service that is using the main branch. Main branch is now here the blue one. And at the same time, I want to develop a new feature. Let's say I want to develop new DAX measures. So I do a new branch, I develop my measure. Probably again, there was some kind of error or update, or one of my colleagues did an update, totally different feature. This means my main branch gets updated. The Power BI service is taking the latest version from the main branch. I continue developing my feature. And once I'm finished, I merge my changes into the main branch. And after that, the main branch will be deployed again to Power BI service. So now I have the whole concept of Git within Power BI service, and I can connect Power BI service directly to Git. All right, are you ready for a demo? I hope so.
Yes. Yes, we are.
So I have here an example report to quickly show you. Let's go here in the Windows Explorer. I have here my report PBIX. It's just a 2 megabyte tiny report. And my report I opened with a double click. So this here is my report, my Power BI report. I have a few columns, I have a few measures, I have a bookmark here. I have a standard theme. So I have a few things in my report. I can also use a different filter. I could, for example, change to Australia. And now is the question, I have a PBIX file. How do I make this whole thing Git compatible? And first thing, so if you try it out, at the moment, this is still a preview feature. So we have to go to the options in Power BI. And then we have to go to our preview features tab. And down here, we have to activate Power BI project save options, PBIP save option. And the next thing you should activate, you don't have to, but you should, is store semantic model using Tyndall format. This is the new format I mentioned. So this is now also implemented, this since only a few weeks or month, and Power BI project save option since last autumn, I think. Once I activated this, I can go and now say File Save As. And to quickly go back here, I have a new folder here that you see is completely empty. I will choose now here this folder. And once I'm in the folder and I have here my save types, I have 3 different. When you don't activate, the 2 things you always have is the first one here, a PBIX file, and a template file, a PBIT file. The thing you only have after you activated the developer mode, what I've just shown in the preview features, is here the Power BI project file, PBIP. Now, if we switch this to PBIP, I chose this folder here, and then I click Save. At the moment, it's working a little bit, but we don't see any changes. After it's finished saving, we will see the changes in Windows Explorer. So until now, nothing actually changed. If I go here to Windows Explorer, suddenly it's not empty anymore. We have now here 2 more folders. My report, that's the name of the report, .report, and my report .semantic model. So if you remember in the slides, at the beginning, when we wanted to upload something in the cloud, our Power BI report was always split into a report and a semantic model. I write it here, dataset, still the old name, but into a report and a semantic model. And if we now go back to our folder, that's exactly what it did. It created a report and a semantic model in this folder structure here. Now to see a little bit better the details, I will open this in Visual Studio Code. Also, Visual Studio Code is my preferred way later to send everything to the cloud to GitHub. So what you see now is this folder. So I just go and say open folder, and then that's actually the folder I just chose. So you have again these 2 folders and my report PBIP. Let's make this a little bit, it doesn't want to go bigger, okay. What you see in my report PBIP is just a small file. It tells you only a few things, for example, the version, which artifacts we have. At the moment, we only have the my report, and if auto recovery is enabled or not. Now we have this report actually split into text format. So let's open here first my semantic model folder. And in my semantic model folder, I have now a few files. The first one I want to mention here is the diagram layout. And actually the diagram layout is what we have here in Power BI, the relationships, the diagram of the different relationships between the different tables, broken down here into a text format that we have every table. We see here every table, we see the height, width, we see the Z index. Then I have my definition. Definition is just which version. I have a dot platform, that's just some metadata. And now the important things are these two folders, the .pbi and afterwards the definition. I think we start first with the definition. Maybe I should do that. In the definition, I have now, because I activated this small tick that we want to use the TMDL, the new format, we have now for every element a new file. So for our relationships, for our model, for our expressions, what is the DAX measures, for the databases, and then also for tables, roles, and cultures. Let's go one by one. So if we have the relationships, and you see it's kind of a YAML format, so we always have here a gap between the specific blocks. We see now here the relationships between the single tables. So I have here from fact internet sales, due date key, to the dim date key. I see here is active false. This is an inactive relationship. If it's active, you see the is active sign here is missing. So this means automatically it's an active relationship. I could also set this to true as far as I remember. Then I have, for example, the model. The model tells us which tables this whole model, sorry, that was one too much, which tables this model contains, which roles this model contains, and which cultures this model contains. We have a few other informations. I don't want to go into details. But for example, if we want now to see the different tables of these data models, we have all of them in our table folder. And each table here is another TIMDL file. So if we, for example, go to our dimensional data table of the date, we have now an own file. We see it starts here with table dim date. And then for each column in this table, for this it has another gap, we have an own block. And we see what date type it is, what is the format string, what is the default summarization, and so on. So I see all of my details here in this file. And important also down here, we see also the M query. We see the different partitions. In standard, by default, it has only one partition. If there would be multiple partitions, you would see them here. And we see the whole M query. The M query is what you do in Power BI, just put together as code. And a huge advantage we will see later in the slides, because it's just intended. So it just has these gaps here. We don't have to escape any quotes or special characters. We can just paste it here. They all just have to start at the same level. And that makes it very, very easy to read. Now, for every element here, I have a different table. For every table, I have a different TIMDL file. I have the same for roles. So in my case, if we go here to our report, and we have different roles, security roles, Canada, Germany, US. If we go back here, we also see the roles here. We see for which table, which permissions is counting. So we see everything that we do in a Power BI file here in text files. That's the definition. So our whole data model, all of our tables, all of our relationships, and one thing I wanted to show is also the measures. We see here in a text-based format. This is the definition. And last but not least, you might think, but when I open this thing here, it has data. It has all the data. Has here, what does it have? 60,000 rows. Where are these rows stored? And this is the only thing that is not in text format. You have here this .pbi folder. And here you have a file called cache.abf. And this file contains all of your data. And just to let you know, this file, the data itself, will later not be uploaded to my Git repository. Is uploaded to the Git repository. All of these cached files will stay locally. Now I see a question. Does it look blurry at your end, or is it just tiny font?
Don't worry. I think the person was suggesting that maybe you zoom, but I see you zoom, so that was why I wanted to confirm from him or her what the issue was.
Yeah, usually it's when I zoom in, of course, then it's a little pixelated and blurry. I still think it makes it a little more clear to show you what I'm
it is
doing.
clearer. It looks well at my hand. All looks good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you to confirm. The second folder we have is the report folder. And at the moment, we have here actually a few files. One is the report.json. And this is the whole report in one file. This is how it used to be before Tyndall. So what we see here in the report, like different visualizations, here the headline, here a bar chart, and so on, all of this is here in this file in the report.json saved. So you see here the names, the layouts, the X and Y positions, and we see already what I meant with the Tyndall is a lot better. Every special character here has to be escaped. So you have many backslashes before all of them. I hope Microsoft is also adapting that at one point. I'm not sure if they do. Except for this, there's not so much information, a little bit of meta information. And what probably is the most important also is the report JSON. And we have here also a theme file. We can come back to this later. So actually, all of this is here in a text format in one folder. And now we can use all of this to use it together with GitHub. At the moment, Microsoft only or Power BI only supports directly the contact with the deployment with Azure DevOps. So I created here in Azure DevOps a new repository for today. At the moment, it's empty, so it doesn't have any files. And I will copy that URL. One of the things I told you is that Git is always working locally on a repository. So at the moment, we have these two folders and one file. And what I want to do is in Visual Studio Code, there's a source control tab. And here you have to initialize the repository. So you can click here on this button. And once this is done, it's initializing. So it's taking everything we have. I can now say this is my initialization. I call it init. And I can say commit. There are no changes. Okay. Now all of this is committed. And now suddenly we have here another folder locally. So at the moment, I'm not connected to anything in the cloud. I'm not connected to GitHub. I'm not connected to Azure DevOps. Locally, he created a Git repository for me. We see it here at the Git folder, and here we have all the information. You don't have to worry about this. This is how Git is working. Now he created my local repository. This means he is tracking all of the files, all of the changes. And when I want to put this now to the cloud in my Azure DevOps, I first have to add my address. And this again, sorry, let's quickly go back. This is the one we get here. I can just copy that. And once I go back, I can say remote, add remote. I want to add this URL. I click enter, remote name. I can say this is only for me, I think. Test deployment. I'm not very creative. Now it's connecting to my Azure DevOps repository that is online. And once it's done that, I can publish it. So this is done now, and I can say again init and publish my branch. In this case, he made now what I first showed in the slides, the first doc, and is uploading at the same time my files to the cloud, to my Git repository. If we go back now here, and probably have to refresh, and now you see here within Azure DevOps, it's exactly the same files that I had offline. I have here my different diagram layouts. I have my definitions, my different Timdal files. I have everything online. The only thing that we shouldn't have is the cache ABF. I think it didn't upload, probably it did. It shouldn't have. Anyway, we have everything online now. So if we go back to our slides, what we did now was the following. We created locally, no, I think I show better at the last slide. What we did now is we took our PBIX file, we saved it as a local repository, and now we uploaded it to Git in Azure DevOps. This is what we did now. What we do next is we want to connect our Power BI service with this Git repository. So for this, I created a new workspace. In the workspace, this is completely empty. I can now go to the workspace settings and say Git integration. And at the moment, this only works with Azure DevOps, but Microsoft announced it will also work with other providers in the future. And we'll now connect to WhatTheFact.bi to Power BI Git integration and check here my Urbis Edge. And I can even say which branch it is. In my case, I want the main. And I click now, connect and sync. I could, by the way, also just map it to a subfolder. And the moment I click this, it's now connecting my Power BI to my Git repository, and it's loading all of the elements here to my Power BI service. We have now here the report already. Takes a few seconds. The next thing we should see, now it's finished. Now you see it's synced, and both of my elements are here, my semantic model and my report. If I go down, I see a status. I see to which branch it is connected, to main in my case, and what time it was synced the last time. What happens now if I go to my report? My report is blank. Why is that? I told you the data is not uploaded, so only the metadata is uploaded. But what I have to do now is I have to update my semantic model. So I can click here the refresh button. It starts now refreshing, taking the data from the data source, doing all the transformation, creating the data model. And once this is done, it has its own version of the data. So now it's finished. We can go again to the report. And now I guess this was cached. Now let's go back to the report. And maybe it was not finished. It should have the data at one point. Refresh history, and now it's completed. And now we can go to the report that should at least now have data. Doesn't want, I guess it's a caching issue. Is it? Yes, now we see we have data here. Only Australia is still cached. Now here we go. So we have now our report deployed to the cloud. In the slides again, what we did now, we made our PBIX a repository. We uploaded the repository to Git, and now we connected Power BI service to this repository. One thing I want to do now, for example, let's say I'm offline here. What I want to do is I probably want to create a new branch. In Visual Studio Code, I have one extension called Git Graph that I highly recommend. It can show us all of these different Git approaches. So for example, now I want to say I want to create a branch and say new DAX measures. Of course, it can not have spaces, and say create branch. So now we create a new branch into the repository. But at the same time, I want to simulate some changes online. So if we go again back to our Power BI service, probably I want to create a new report based on the semantic model. So if I go here and I say, where is it? Explore this data, create a blank report. Let's do just something silly like just a pie chart with some people will hate me now, probably the country, and a measure. Let's take the order quantity. Let's better put a bar chart. And we can save this as a new report. So let's say my second report and save this in the workspace. If we go back now, we should have 3 elements. We have my report, the data set, and the semantic model. And new, we have now my second report. And you see now it's uncommitted. So this is like a local repository now. And source control also up here has a big fat 1. So what we want to do now is we want to also commit, because you can also commit from Power BI to the DevOps repository. So I can now say new report created. I say what I want to check in case it's this, and I say commit. And now Power BI service is writing back to my Git repository. If we go to the slides, this I explained now, we did this. What we did now actually is we created this version, but we did it from Power BI service. From Power BI service, we wrote now another commit, another version to the Git repository. Let's see if it's finished. It's finished, it's synced. And now let's close this, don't save. So we're in Visual Studio Code. We wanted to change some of the, here we wanted to create new measures. What means I can now open my report. Maybe I shouldn't have changed it. And then I will just create a random measure. Takes usually a second to load. Maybe I shouldn't have closed it. That was probably not a clever part, but I was not sure if I changed something in Git. So I will not change anything in the report in the visualization. I just want to add a new measure, and I can say, call this one, let's make this a little bigger, Git test measure, and I say I only want my, let's say the sum sales. Do I have something of sales? Sales amount times 10%. Let's not overthink it. We don't even use it. I just want to save it. Now it's written back into the Tyndall format. And if we go now to our, if we go back now to our folder, we see here a few colors. We see a few things changed. So first of all, I see here what exactly changed. Actually, it's also changed something in the report. Local settings, okay, and it changed here the definition, tables, fact, internet sales, and here was also where we made the change. If we go to our source control tab, we actually can really see the changes in my Tyndall file. I see now here a totally different block. Measure Git test measure, this didn't exist before, and this is what I want to commit. Actually, we can commit all of them, make it a little easier. And now I want to say new measure. I think we have to change the branch first. We're in the new DAX measure branch and say new measures added. And now I can commit my changes to this branch. And now it committed the changes. I want to publish them, and they are uploaded now to the second branch that we have. We see now we have our main branch and our new DAX measures branch. And now I want to merge them again to the main branch. So what I will do now is I have to change again first to the, first of all, to see the changes, I can refresh here. And probably I have to do first fetch from the remote. looks like, to also get the changes that we had online through the Power BI service. Come on. Yes, here we are. So we did here a new deployment in main. This is this one. And then we added our second branch. And if I go now to the branch main, I can now say I want to merge my changes from the new measures branch. I hope the demo god is good with me. And now I can try again to say merge into current branch. And let's merge and commit this whole thing. And after that, our merge, we will call it. Yes, already did it. And now you see it created automatically here our branch. At the same time, we had here our deployment, our new version of main. And now we merged it together. I think probably I chose the wrong main, but I think it should have worked. Let's see. I think we have to sync the changes, and then it should create the new main branch that we have all of our changes combined. Let's take a look how this whole thing looks here in Git. So if we go here, now to the branches, we see, if we go to the branches, we see the two that we did, the main branch and the new DAX measure branch. We can see them here. And if we go to the commits, yes, now we see exactly also what happens. We had our initial commit. Then I started my new measures edit. At the same time, I did a merge with from Power BI service. Sorry, here I created my new report, and at the end we merged everything together into one branch. This should now in Power BI service show us that there is now a difference. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does. It realizes here is the update required because we changed something on my report. So if I click on source control here, I can now say update all. So it's grabbing all of the changes. And at the same time, we can now go here. I think it did it already, and say I want, I think a refresh should do it. And then we should see, and it created it, my second report. So I have two folders, one for the first report and one for the second report. And the nice thing here is now I can also open this. So not only this report, that was the first one, I can also now open this report that I just created online. And then we should see the report that we created online. It's now in the Git repository. After syncing, it's now also in my local repository. And now I could do changes and upload them again. Also, let's see first. So this here should be the report that we had online. Yes, that looks good. This is exactly what we did. Let's close that again. And you also see here now my Git graph also refreshed a little. It merged together. And now you see that the main is now our only branch that we have. I've seen there were a few questions in the box, or a few discussions. Michael, do you were there some
Sure.
that has to be answered, or were there discussions?
Yeah. Lots of questions for you. I just didn't want to interrupt.
Okay.
So are you ready now? Shall I start to read them to you, or?
I have a few more slides, but I think we're a little over time. But we can do the questions now, I think.
Personally, or like on behalf of the community, we are not pressed for time. We work with your time.
Okay.
So if you need more minutes, we'll give you more minutes. Participants who maybe have something else to do, they understand that the session is recorded, so they can watch whatever part they miss if they need to drop out before we finish. So let me know how you prefer. Do you want to finish all of what you want to show, or should I start reading out the question? What's your preference?
Then let's go to the questions, and probably let's see how much time we need. I have one more thing to show, and otherwise then we will just wrap up with a summary slide.
Okay, so let me start with, let me scroll up. All right, so as at when you are walking us through the folder, what's in the report
Mm-hmm.
folder, what's in the semantic model folder. So Hadi asked that, what about the visualizations? Which particular file holds the data about the visualizations, the
Mm-hmm.
coordinates of the visuals? So that was the question the person asked.
That's a very good question. So for each report, you have a .report folder. So here you see the report for the folder for my report.report, and then the other report that I created online, my second report.report. And in this folder, the main file is the report.json. At the moment, this report contains everything. I personally hope that they probably will do something like with Tyndall to break it down into different files, but I don't know if this is about to come. At the moment, everything you see in the report is here in this file. And to break it down a little, you see, for example, which theme is used. This you see here at the beginning in the resource package. And then in the sections, you see the different visuals. Each visual is here in these visual containers. And you see the height and the width of each file, as well as the X, Y, and Z position. So one visual here starts at 0.000 and at Z00 and at Y at 104. All of the details is then in this config element. So you see the name of the visual, and you can even rename this. I think Chris Webb once did an article that said that you can rename these visuals. And then this row is pretty long. So I will scroll a little to give you an idea. It's all options about this specific visual. You see actually everything from formatting, every option that you give to the visual, everything is in this long line. Um, so you can look a little. You see, for example, here, oops, that was the wrong one. You see, for example, here what visual type it is. This is a tablix, so a table. You see here to which query it's referencing, and then you see, let's go a little further, that this is going to the calendar year and so on. So everything about the report is in this file. Did this help with the question?
Yes, yes. So, Adi, I hope, yeah, I think that's what you asked anyway. So another question, let's see. All right, so she's here. Apologies if I'm using the wrong pronoun. So the person has said yes. Okay.
Perfect.
Adi also, the next question is also from Hadi, how to convert them to text. I'm guessing that was in conjunction with this. So I think you've answered that. Oh, okay, great. So Adi said that's been answered. So I'm moving on to the
Okay.
next question from Batos. So Batos is much more concerned about the Tyndall. So he or she is saying, will this conversion to Tyndall work with deployment to PBI server, SSRS from DevOps, or is it only for PBI service?
I think only with the PBI service. I don't know any announcement about Power BI report server, but if you look back about the last updates, there was not so much news. So I don't know if it will come in Power BI report server, but I personally don't. I don't know. But my feeling says more no. But in general, you could no, I don't know. I don't know. Probably we can you can ask in the Power BI community, but I personally don't know.
Okay. Right. So the question after that is from Adi. So Adi is asking, and I think he's a bit similar to Bartol's question. Another question. The two questions that are after this are a bit similar. Maybe I'll read them one after the other so that I don't do
Mm-hmm.
injustice. So one says how to check for inconsistencies while merging. For example, there's a relation between two tables in one version, and that relation is
Mm-hmm.
removed in the other version. So maybe, two different changes that While I'm working on the last pool, you're working on the last pool, but then we did different things, and then we have committed our changes maybe to different branches, and then we want to merge. So I think the person's question is more about the merge conflicts that sometimes can come up. Like, what's the best way to handle them?
That's a very good question, actually. So conflicts will happen when you work at the same elements. When in Git you do the merge, it will give you a warning, or it will give you an alert that you have a conflict with these two merges, because they are doing the same thing. Both take, for example, one measure or something. And when this happens, Git will tell you that there is a conflict, and then you have to decide what to do. When you say measure A should look like this, and the other person say measure A should look like this, at the end, someone has to decide. And this you do when you do the merge. You have merging conflicts, and you have to then decide what you do. But of course, in general, you can you still have to communicate with the team who's working on the same resources, because when you suddenly change some relationships, someone else is changing other relationships. At the end, the Power BI file will be a mess. I mean, you can go back to the last version that was not a mess, but in general, you still have to communicate well, of course. But you can work on different elements independently and then just merge them together. Hope that helped.
Yes, yes. And so, Barto's second question, I'll read it the way Bartos has written it. I would like to see the PR view of the changes too. I'm guessing maybe that should be like what you showed with the Git graph, but I don't know if maybe there's a different answer to it. But the question is, I would like to see the PR, and I guess that's pull request. I would like to see the PR view of the changes too.
I don't really know what.
Okay, yes, clarified. So he's saying okay. I guess what he's referring to was more of like, in this demo, what you've done is you're the only dev right now. So I'm guessing, say, for instance, there are multiple devs, and then you've all decided that everybody should have their own feature branches, and then at later, which I think you've done, you showed us how to merge, but I think you didn't do it via PR request. Since you own both branches.
It's a short demo with me as only developer, so there is no, of course, approval process and so on. This is how you would usually do it, either in Git or in DevOps. You have to set up the approval processes and so on. This doesn't change from any other software development. This is exactly the same.
So, Bartos, that's your answer. I'm checking if there's any more questions. I'm going down the list. Okay? So Bartos is also, I think he's happy with what you've answered. He's just asking, is the file that ends on the PR the PBIX or the Timdo?
It's Timdo. So what at the end ends up in the repository are these text files. And these are the only ones that count. So at the end, it's breaking down a PBIX into the Timble and multiple configuration formats, like you see in here, the report, and in the semantic model, some definitions and so on. But at the end, it's all broken down into different text files.
Great. Okay, and I think those are the questions. Others are just comment. Frank is saying he would like to access the recording. I think at this point, I will share the link of where they get the recording by tomorrow. Then Saka is just emphasizing what you said about the need for communication among team members so that the conflicts don't come up too frequently. And let's see, is there anything else? So that's all. Everybody is happy and saying thanks for the answers you gave to your question.
I would show two more things, or one more thing, more or less. One thing you can, for example, do is you can just change the theme file. I prepared here a dark mode.json, And if we now go to our second report that we created online, I will put it into the static resources, then shared resources where we have our first theme file. And I just place it in here. And what I only have to do then is in my report JSON, and no, I think only here, I am looking now for this JSON and I replace it with a dark mode. I think here I have the wrong file open. It should be in the Power BI, sorry, report JSON. So I look for this and replace it with all of them with the dark mode. And if I save now and I can open the report, then except for if I did an error, it should have changed my theme file. And of course, you could, this is just an example, you could automate that. And for example, change all the themes in one workspace with one script and connecting it to developer mode. So my message behind this is just it's just a start, developer mode. You can do many, many more things by splitting it down into different files and tables and being able to access it and change things programmatically or with other programs. Let's hope that it works. Either we get an error message or we will see a dark file now. Hopefully it's a dark file that wins, and it is a dark file. So we changed now the theme file by changing, adding the new JSON and then changing it in one file. Then I would quickly go back to my slides. So to sum up the developer mode, it's solving most of our problems. So the first one we had, you remember, is the collaboration. Now multiple developers can work on the same item. As we already discussed and someone from the audience confirmed, still communication is crucial and you have to communicate with your colleagues. We have now a versioning and the time travel is possible. I can now say go back to the version from last Monday or from version, I don't know, to version 2.8. Only actually the text-based files will be saved and not the data as we've seen. And we have now a diff version between two different files or multiple files and can see what is going on. So Power BI is not a black box anymore. If we do a diff, we see what really changed. The last thing is some more files about Tyndall, the Power BI on steroids. I think I showed most of it already. Matthias Tierbach, as I said, developed it. And all of it is saved into different files. This was the announcement last year. And as you see here, in a bigger measure, we can just copy a whole block and don't have to worry anymore about quotes and things like this. Like this, I'm at the end of my presentations. If you have any questions, I will stay here a little longer to answer them. You can reach me happily on WTF.bi/LinkedIn or look for my name on LinkedIn or also on Twitter.
Thank you. And if it's easy for you to copy the contact me links and paste,
yeah,
so I
absolutely.
don't make a mistake if I'm trying to type it out. Okay. And thanks a lot for this. It's been an in-depth knowledge sharing in terms of you went through the core concept, explained everything, and then did a demo at the end also. So that's really helpful. Thanks. And any other questions from anyone? I've got two questions from the house. We ask every presenter will bring these two standard questions. One is your journey, how you got to this stage in your Power BI knowledge and your choice of Power BI. So was it like from, I don't know, from kindergarten you've always knew that you will do data analytics and BI, or was it that you had a different career at start and then at some point things happened and you pivoted to data analytics? So we would like to hear your interesting journey, because we always find everybody's journey some kind of motivation to those who
Absolutely. One thing I want to mention first, maybe you know the Fabric Career Hub from Microsoft, and I was lucky to be interviewed for the Fabric Career Hub. So if you go down here, you will see my video, because what you asked, actually, I tell here in, I think, 2 or 3 minutes how my career passed. I can also post a link in the chat if you want.
Good.
And I think that's the easier way. The short version is, I think you cannot plan a career. So I started as everyone else with no knowledge. You have to then, you have to be interested, of course, and motivated, and the rest comes along the way. So you learn a little, then you know a little more. Next time you try to expand this knowledge, you have to, I think communities like this are amazing to gain knowledge. That's the reason I'm also very happy to present in user groups like this. And I think you learn the most there. And then you have to figure out for yourself that you really understand it, and continue. And it takes time. I know it's not fast, but at the end you will grow and you will get a lot of knowledge. And I think especially the data community is so open. You can always write to me or Michael, also to you. I'm pretty sure people are very happy to answer questions and help. Just you have to put in the work. You have to dig deeper, expand your knowledge, learn more. But it is a nice path.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, you've shared the link. Great. So people can watch.
Yes.
All right, great. So one last question is, what's your advice? I know you've answered it slightly, but still I will ask you as a standalone question. What's your advice for people who are new in this field? They are trying to still get their feet. They want to get to a level where they too can become professionals in this field. What's the right approach to take for them? What's your advice to new entrants?
Learning and being motivated. I think user groups like this, again, I think if you're really new, you should start with dashboards in a day. The Microsoft had the Fabric in a day, dashboard in a day. I'm also sometimes doing these trainings. They're for free. Everyone can attend. It's a one-day training, totally for free. It's a really great place to start. And then you have to work a little bit with data. I think knowledge only sticks when you do it yourself. You cannot teach someone. I cannot teach you how to swim. You have to jump in the water, and then you have to try yourself. Don't jump into too deep water if you don't know how to swim. But in general, I think you know what I mean. You have to try out yourself. And then come to meetings like this, watch the recordings. There are so many nice user groups, so many nice content, so much nice content on YouTube. I think that's the way.
Great. So thank you very much. And at this juncture, we are done with everything. You've answered all the questions. We've asked you for advice, and I'm checking there is no outstanding questions. So I'm going to say a very big thank you for helping make today's session really interactive. In addition to the superb content you've shared, you've been generous with your time. You spend more time than we originally, told you, which means that you value letting us understand more than just trying to get across the data. You wanted us to fully understand. You answered all the questions, and I'm sure everyone in the session has found this really engaging and educative. I hope you all try to put this to practice in the next couple of days and weeks, so that you don't lose this knowledge. And with that, I just checking. I don't think there's anything outstanding. I'm going to share Denis' website and LinkedIn again, so that you can connect with him. And with that, I will say a big thank you for joining today's session, and have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you, Denis, for the very, very exciting and informative, also educative session. Thank you very much for the approach you've used. Now everybody
Thank you for having me.
Got a thorough knowledge. Yes, thanks. And so I'm going to end the session now. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. I'm not so sure if I will speak next week, but see you next time. Yeah. Bye,
everyone. Have a great Sunday. Bye.